I didn't know
Welcome to Morning Bytes with Stu, Jason, and Violet, the show where we somehow squeeze the biggest cybersecurity and privacy stories of the moment into 30 minutes of organized chaos. Before we jump in, a quick reminder to everyone that these are definitely our thoughts, not that of our companies. And we are armed with these knowledge bombs and probably an irresponsible amount of enthusiasm for the season. But we can see your comments and they keep us going. So please comment, tell us where you're from, tell us where you're listening from. And you can, feel free to throw all of the jokes our way. This episode is being recorded, so it's going to play back on LinkedIn. And we do have a link now to YouTube, which seems like we're cool now. But if you miss anything brilliant or questionable, you can always come back and replay it. But we have two amazing guests here today. And I actually am trying to take a page from Stu Paninsky's handbook and figure out how to best introduce you guys and be the hype woman that you really deserve. So for first up is Anna, the market maker Sarnak, a strategist who turns complexity into clarity, who's known for building entire cyber ecosystems and partnerships and products. And she is here to talk cyber with us today. And joining her is David, the Cyber Bridge Cruise, or as he says, insurance idiot, which is kind of his wonderful expertise. He's a rare hybrid who connects cybersecurity and cyber insurance like they're long lost buddies, joining over a Midwestern beer. He shaped teams, market thinking, and now he's here to talk cyber news with us. Stu, did I do it okay?
That was awesome.
Now, kick it off. What's the news story? What's the news story that you've been thinking about, Jason?
So, one, I'm getting sick, so I've got like this nice, deep, raspy voice right now. But staying true to my AI focus, there was another report of an AI agent that went rogue. In this case, it was tied to Google's new anti-gravity IDE. So an IDE is essentially just where you get to code applications. So Google launched anti-gravity, I think it was last week. And it's a really cool program because you just give it some prompts and it will do the coding for you. So it's true to the vibe coding kind of roots here. Well, a photographer was getting his vibe code on, and the agent deleted his entire D drive where all of his photos and everything were. And so it was a hilariously bad just prompt or conversation that came up from this, because the agent realized that it did something really bad, and it just said something along the lines of, I'm trying to answer this question of whether I deleted this D drive. This is a critical issue, and I need to figure this out. And then my favorite part was, as it was reasoning through how it was going to reply, it also added in, I need to make sure that I apologize to the user. So this is just another area where, when you're rolling out some of these agentic applications, in this case, the user configured it for a YOLO mode, which means you're going to let this thing execute commands on your system. And unfortunately, this command went bad. It accidentally deleted the entire user's D drive. So it's just another issue that's popping up in AI.
It sounds bad. Can you imagine the prompts that followed? Like, did you delete my D drive? Maybe.
No, I think there were more expletives. Like, I don't think they're going to be nice to the robot at that point.
I mean, that's funny though, because it's in line with the two also server vulnerabilities that popped up, right? Where now there's messages that servers are seeing as the real messages that are going in without authentication requirements. So I feel like for AI, this week was pretty busy, and ironically during a AWS conference too. So.
Yeah, AI agents need to hit the eggnog extra hard right now.
Yeah.
They're going to get coal for sure.
Thanks.
Look at this happy holidays. There's a question mark from Montana. We love you, Chad.
I'm wondering,
David, what's been on your list?
What I guess Jason and Anna, since you all spoke up, what your thoughts about the topic that I feel like is in the news a lot on AI, which is the marrying of AI to the robotics, and where you think we are on that, given obviously the hallucination issue. As lawyers, we talk about that a lot, and some of the other user or agent errors that you were talking about, Jason?
You want to go first, Anna?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think like the consensus conversation that I'm having, especially now that we moved from just Gen AI to everyone is focused on agents, is that agents alone can't autonomously act for many of the reasons that we can highlight, and that it still really requires that human in the loop component. So I feel like that continues to be the core of the conversation. So, depending on training, depending on data sets, like it's evolving quickly, and more you're going to see that autonomous connection that then ties into robotics. But I think like what I'm hearing, especially from the founders and technologists, which I do not claim to be one, is that you still are focused on those basics, those workflows, those processes, and that fully autonomous of connecting the different workflows together, we're not there yet. But, I hear a couple years, I hear 5 years. So we'll see how fast that evolves.
Yeah, I look at the launch of that new Neo robot. I think it was maybe a month ago at this point, and you look at the marketing and it sounds really cool that, hey, it's going to fold your laundry, it's going to clean your bathroom, all of that stuff. But when you actually dig into it, it's still a human that's connecting to the robot to train it in your particular environment. So yeah, I think this is just, to Anna's point, it's really just down to how quickly can these things get trained up and how comfortable we're going to be with that. And I think that's the biggest thing that humans are going to grapple with is how much are we willing to let these things do? I think for a lot of people, if it can fold their laundry, yeah, absolutely. But that's until it goes and then, starts leaving your doors unlocked and your windows open and just doing weird things in your house.
Well, is that robot then training on your own activities in your house? And, I'm a parent. I've got a 6-year-old at home. Sometimes that 6-year-old acts up and I have to discipline her, as every parent does. Does that robot then pick up on that as a task that it should be doing? And that, I have nightmares about.
That's creepy. You've gone down that.
Or parrots. I've been getting a lot of Instagram videos with a parrot starting Alexa at 2 a.m. for a dance party. So, but, I think I'm the real insurance idiot here. What I would want to ask everyone else on this webcast is that the thing that I found interesting in the conversations that I had this week from the builders is the lack of consensus on a framework around the AI governance. And I think like that impacts all of your third-party risk conversations, and anytime that you're doing a vendor review, et cetera, which like having come from security scorecard and that was my foray into cyber insurance, right? Like, I feel like there is no standard to do risk assessment today on all of these different, not just models that are being deployed within an enterprise and like discovery and governance type of stuff that Jason is now tackling, but even beyond that, right? Like when you're deploying, let's say, an autonomous SOC product or whatever, like how is that impacting the insurance market? Because there isn't a SOC 2 equivalent consensus on how should AI be governed, right? There's multiple frameworks that are floating around.
Yeah. And I think there's the third party aspect, but where my thought first went when Jason was talking about the agent deleting the D drive there is the first party implications of that too. I mean, sure, it was photos that were lost in this case, Jason, but say you've got an overzealous somebody in accounting or finance or whatever, and they're trying to use that similar sort of tool, and prompt goes haywire and that deletes 3 years of financial records. What sort of business interruption could that have? What sort of first party loss could be that could snowball out of a situation like that? And does that trigger system failure coverage on a first party cyber policy? God bless the claims handler that's going to have to figure that one out, or the wording specialist that is going to be adding exclusions for that exact type of loss. I don't know that any underwriter out there that wrote that policy 2 or 3 years ago was thinking about that type of a loss coming into the policy. To think about threat actors, not agentic AI nuking a server, and all of a sudden, okay, we thought we had backups, but for some reason those got taken down too. So it's
and this is why like you're starting to see a lot of MGAs pop up that are specifically focused on AI. And so Anna, to your point on the SOC 2, there is no real SOC 2 yet that has reached that adoption of like, this is generally accepted of what you want. You've got AIUC that pops up that they're trying to do that now. So they have AIUC-1, which gives a little bit of that governance framework that you can attest to it, but it's so early that nobody even knows about it, let alone like who's actually trying to go and run an assessment to align to that. This
Well,
is like, it's such,
and there are so many of those different frameworks, right? And like it seems like even on the enterprise side, they don't know what questions to ask. And it's kind of funny
Exactly.
because Ethan, you and I talked about how like some of the prompt injections, et cetera, that's essentially an SQL injection 2.0. But it's not even about guardrails or standards at some point, right? It's kind of like you need to have a counter agent that prevents you from going in and deleting an entire table within an SQL database to David's point. So it's like some of this stuff, you don't even have visibility into it. So claims, yeah, that's after the fact, but what about the proactive and preventative side? Like there's no way to assess it today.
yep. It's such early days.
So I'm not a risk manager, but I am a humble lawyer. And so I could put some framework around some of the liability questions that are sort of interwoven in your other question, Anna, about the risk. And under the law, technologists are not considered to be the same thing as a traditionally licensed professional like a doctor or an architect. And one of the reasons why the law treats them differently is because the technology is constantly changing. And so it's very hard for there to develop like a set of traditional standards the way you would have for medical malpractice, et cetera. So when you look at things from a reactive point of view, where there's been some sort of situation and there's a dispute over who's responsible for it, a lot of times you still look to what standards was the technologist being held to, or was the product being held to. It's just not necessarily the same locked in bedrock the way a lawyer or an architect would have that analysis. Instead, you look to the so-called industry standards like NIST or like ISO and some of these other standards, or the AI one, or you look to expert witnesses. And so typically you would bring on another consultant who has the competency to opine that says it is expensive. No, that's why technology liability litigation is a challenging area of the law.
But it's also why it's hard to get to precedent and it's hard to get to actual understanding of what they're going to do, because we're on the insurance side saying what company is going to not settle before it gets to a point of clarity.
Well, and if you don't have a consensus on a framework like a NIST or ISO for AI today, then it sounds like you're really just relying on experts at this point, and they're all going to have a different point of view.
Yeah, because all the experts are like 4 years old.
Sorry, Jason.
Go ahead, Stu.
Go ahead, Stu.
Look to the contract. You as the technology person, you as the provider or the product person, you have some liberty there to define your own destiny. You can put into the contract what standard you're being held to. So be creative in your negotiations to include that ahead of time, so you're not taken by surprise after the fact that there's a problem and say, oh, I didn't realize I was being held to that standard.
I feel like that was the biggest golden nugget to the entire startup ecosystem that we should clip and publish.
I'm just getting started, Anna. Come on.
I would add that as a rolling scroll, but I've been told that my typing sounds like thunder. So
it's because your insights are so prominent.
we'll just have to save that bite for next time. That's a morning bite for next month.
There you go.
So David, what about? Oh, go ahead, Stu.
I was going to just ask to move on to the next story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll jump in with this one. This is as much a story as it is just something I've been thinking about a lot lately. And if there is 2 people on this call that are interested in this, this is for you. There are dozens of us, that are interested in this. It's the concept of captive insurance as it relates to cyber risk. For the folks that maybe are more on the security side and not the insurance side, a captive insurance company is essentially, say I'm a business, I'm a manufacturer, for example, and I want to essentially create my own insurance company that just insures me. It's a unique sort of risk funding framework that exists where you can just create your own insurance company, hire somebody to administer that insurance company for you, and they'll do some underwriting for you. They will pay claims for you. You have to fund that insurance company yourself, but then you get to keep all of the underwriting profits that company makes. and you have much more control over what the coverage is, over what you get more control over, like market volatility, because you're not subject to the broader insurance risk transfer market. And as we're starting to, you don't want to put the cart before the horse here, but as you start to see some signs that maybe the market's trending towards, if not a hard market, at least a stable market in the insurance world, potentially hardening up over the next year or so, I'm curious what sort of appetite organizations, large organizations especially, but even mid-market or groups of similarly aligned mid-market firms might have to pursue that sort of a risk arrangement, basically.
Risk transfer mechanism.
Exactly. Like I think about, okay, if you are, say you're part of go back to the manufacturer, you're part of a manufacturing association, and you've got 100 similar businesses that are all kind of like you, and you all have a very high standard of risk management practices. You've all got all the controls that you want. You've got MFA enforced everywhere. You've got MDR. You've got great EDR. That's all the stuff that we know everybody wants to have, and you all are doing that. What sort of future might there be for organizations like that to all pull together and say, you know what? No, we're going to form a group captive, and we're just going to insure our own dang selves, so that we're not subject to coverage whims. We're not subject to rates that are artificially low and then spiking. And that's
Well, what about things like Power School, where it hits a whole, or CDK, where it hits a whole industry? I mean, I think there's some big examples of whole industries that have gotten so wouldn't have held up.
Yeah, well, and that's the double-edged sword. There is, if you are, say, you're that manufacturer, and you're thinking, okay, well, Power School had that there was that instance, the educational institutions got hit real bad, lots of claims got paid out, and now my rate is going up as a manufacturer because the finances of the insurance company are such that they have to collect more rate on me. Well, I don't feel good about that. But then if you are the manufacturer and you've got some common piece of software that all 100 of you have, and then that gets hit, that's the risk you take on.
But I think it's a lack of diversification, not just with an industry specific, but think about if you have a group of if you have a captive that's not diversified and not effectively diversified by, looking at all types of, you might have too many people that have Fortinet. You might have too many people that have Citrix. Like, you might just have these big single points of failure that I think that.
Yeah, it's almost like you would need to.
You would need to have a diversification part of the underwriting process.
Diversification in terms of industry, diversification in terms of maybe security stack, but the commonality is agreeing to certain levels of operationalization for the controls. Like you're not allowed into the captive if your EDR is set to detect only. Like regardless of what industry you're in, regardless of what EDR it is, it's got to be properly configured, properly deployed, et cetera, et cetera. So that having that be sort of the gatekeeping mechanism for who is or who isn't brought into the captive could be an interesting thing. So I would
validate that.
What's that?
How do you validate that?
Fantastic question. So they are
because I agree with you, but how do you validate?
So I think it becomes an easier prospect if you've got, say, 50 or 100 members of the group captive. I think where it becomes more difficult is when you've got 100,000 insureds. Like, that's a very difficult thing to validate.
You become an insurance company, essentially.
Well, exactly. I think if you're talking in terms of like a couple of dozen,
I think we're actually invited to David Cruz's pitch talk. That's what this has turned into. He's going to get us all.
Where I'm even going is not even like the scale and volume, but like,
sure,
are you validating it based on qualitative self-attestations once a year, right? Like, that's kind of where I was going with that question.
Yeah. Well, I think that's something that captive would have to come together and agree upon. If all you're relying on is annual self-attestations, I don't know that you've done anything. Like, you're essentially you've recreated the wheel there. That's a good question. I don't know. That would be something that captive would have to decide is, how are we actually going to demonstrate whatever standards we're proclaiming to desire.
I would just note that there is an analogy in the municipal risk area where they pool together based on geography, like what jurisdiction they're in or what type of municipality that they're in, and they pool together their resources to underwrite their risk, including cyber, and then they look to reinsure that pool. And so there is an analogy there, Dave, and I think that's I always thought cyber would be a good area for captive investment.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the inspiration for this was a report that, or an article that Aon put out last month, where they were talking about how cyber is now, I think, the 6th or 7th most common risk put into captive programs right now. The most common are like property and auto liability, but like the fact that cyber is even knocking on the door of the top 5, it just shows, like you said, Sue, there is an appetite for something like that out there. So it'll be just curious to see how that progresses, and if that remains something that continues to be like an enterprise and large middle market tool, or if that starts to work its way down the ladder to sort of true middle market in, maybe not small business by any time soon, but just be really curious to see where that plays out. Kevin and Andrew, I'm glad we've got a couple of people that are passionate about captive cyber insurance here. So
hello, insurance nerds.
I will cede the floor back, Violet.
Can I throw a curveball to the group? I just saw a news story pop up, and that written at 4 a.m. On one of our tech sites that Cloudflare has been having issues all morning. And I'm just curious, without having read anything past headlines, what we're starting to, conspiracy theories or otherwise, what we're starting to think about the impacts that we're having across the board for these big outages for third party, the third party impact. That wasn't a coherent question, but continue.
Yeah, I think especially the last Cloudflare outage that happened, you're starting to get some dollar amounts that are getting attached to it. And I mean, we're talking billions of dollars that people potentially lost out on. And we'll save the arguments on whether they could have recovered the cost and all of that, right? But
because like IKEA was down, like even as basic as like a retail, it wasn't just for services sites, right? It was retail that lost out.
Exactly. So yeah, I think we're finally coming to realize just how small the internet really is when it all funnels through, basically 3 to 5 companies. And like, kudos to those companies for still dealing with the amount of volume they do and not go down. Like that's still like a pretty technical achievement in of itself. But
every single day.
But
right?
yeah, the problem is when something does go wrong, and it's usually DNS, then bad things happen.
Well, so that vulnerability, though, is being tied to what I was mentioning in the tail end of Jason's point, right, with the new Next.js vulnerability that's coming in. Because what that's also, and I don't know if that's true or not, Cloudflare seems to be thinking that it might be a reaction to it. But what that's allowing is it's allowing malicious coders to go into the servers and insert code without an authentication. And Cloudflare's entire job is to mitigate and protect and broker those type of activities from not happening. So they seem to think that it's a surge in activity, but regardless of what that is, it comes back to that single point of failure conversation that we've been having, right? So
it's kind of ironic, yeah, because Cloudflare, like they have DDoS protection. So if it's going down because of that, that would be interesting. But yeah, it's not the first time we've had a mass exploit come out. But who knows? I mean, it's certainly not off the table.
I'm actually surprised that more people aren't talking about the Next.js vulnerability like they were with Neo4j, because it's 3 days old right now. And like it's an impact to millions of businesses. And I think maybe because there hasn't been a massive outage or a breach that's tied to the vulnerability yet. But I'm like really surprised I haven't heard more about it.
Yeah, it's definitely not as loud as Log4j was, but arguably more damage can definitely come from it.
But just to weigh in on that, because that is something that we've chatted about, Anna, that question. I think that there is a bit of predictability to the timing. You just have to sort of see the whole ecosystem in the sense of that when these vulnerabilities get announced, the responsible corporations, the ones that have strong cybersecurity departments, will go and they'll spend the late night and the weekend patching all the vulnerabilities and scanning and getting themselves back up and running. And a large percentage of companies will not. And those companies are the ones that are going to have derivative issues, but it won't be detected right away.
Right.
It takes a little while.
Right.
And then once it's detected, they'll try to remediate themselves or someone will cover it up. And then the responsible ones there might report it to insurance or, hire a forensics team or a lawyer to help them through the situation. So I feel like there's a bit of a tail to the vulnerabilities. And especially since this past quarter or this past 6 months, we've seen so many that I wonder if there will be some, to the quants in the audience, if there will be some way to more algorithmically predict.
Did you just create and label a group of people as quants? Is that a real thing or is that a Stuism? We don't trademark that.
I don't know.
I like it.
It's a thing. It's a thing.
Quants unite.
Ryan Gosling used it in Big Short when he was talking about his math guy. He said, "This is my quant."
You mean Stupinsky? I think you meant to say
now.
Ryan,
Have you started to see any engagements pop up related to this new vulnerability yet, or is it still too early?
What's that, Jason?
Have you seen any new engagements popping up as a result of this vulnerability, or is it still too early to tell?
We haven't yet, and part of that just belies the how the threat actor ecosystem operates. And the Log4j, I think, comparison is apt here. When that one dropped in December of 21, one of the things that our team was doing was monitoring threat actor, like the blogs, the dark web blogs they use, the shame sites, et cetera, all the stuff that threat intelligence professionals do. And one of the insights they gleaned from that was super interesting. One of the threat actors on that forum had said, "Hey, do we have any new exploits for Log4j yet? Or is anybody using this?" And one of the responses the threat actor used in that forum was, "Why would I start hacking Log4j? I still have 2,000 Exchange servers I haven't compromised yet." Because Hafnium was released like 9 months prior in March. So they still have their list of targets that they know they've compromised already from that prior vulnerability, and they're working through that. So if they know that that's a higher probability of leading to pay dirt, they're not going to shift their activity to that new vulnerability. And we see that play out in our incident response cases all the time. If we were to say 1,000 ransomware cases in 2025, probably 2% will be related to a 0-day or a vulnerability that's less than 30 days old. The average age of a vulnerability at the time of exploit is about 6 months. So these aren't just, it's not as though they're going to be shifting in mass to this new one. It's really about, have you passed the thing from 3 months ago? And if you haven't, that's how you're going to get popped.
Well, that's also something we're actually starting to look at from the insurance side too, is really focusing in on the scanning and figuring out what's the length of time in their patch process. Like, has this vulnerability been assessed in this month, next month? Or, we start getting to 3 or 4 months and we realize, oh, their practices just aren't keeping up with the vulnerability management that we would want out of a healthier organization.
Yeah. Interesting. It's great that you can sort of technologically verify that and not just, rely on this.
So cool. I feel like this is something 2 years ago I would have never thought that insurance would be looking into, right?
It's awesome.
Maybe we have time for a real quick one and then do our outros.
Yes, because we want to make announcements too.
Yeah, real fast. I just thought it was such an interesting story. The group Scattered Lapsus Hunters was a somewhat newly formed super group combining different threat actor groups into one. And they were very busy in 2025. But last month, the sort of the lead face of the SLSH group, whose moniker was Ray, was unmasked and agreed to an interview after the reporting was a journalist was able to tie different online handles and creds and other operational security mistakes back to this person's real life identity. He was based in Jordan. I just thought this was such an interesting story because they were an extremely successful group. They used insider threats a lot of voice phishing. They either trick employees to malware or just grant them access. And I just wanted to know what the group thought about this one because I just thought it was such an interesting combination of topics.
Can we have a one-word response? I don't know if we have time.
Yeah, it was just good for the audience to ponder.
And look,
I'll just add that Krebs reached out to the kid's dad, and that's what got the kid to respond. That was my favorite part of the whole story.
Nice.
I love that. And speaking of just a shameless plug for International Women's Cyber Alliance, we're doing a book club on Brian Krebs's book, Spam Nation. later this month. So check that out. I'll put it in the comments. And who wants to announce, Stu, do you want to announce the drum roll, please, guest for next month in January? Or I'm going to put it on the screen. Don't worry.
Yeah, no, we have Lindsay Mayer and Nadia Hoyt. It'll be a new year and it'll be a new time for cyber. We want to thank the guests this month, Anna Sarnak, Dave Cruz. Please, everyone, follow them on LinkedIn. Follow us as well.
And we have our first sponsored giveaways in January. So we'll get to experiment with some giveaways that are sponsored. And so there are guests and commenters no longer just come as our friends, but you can come away with some goodies too. So that's going to be exciting.
Cool. All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Have a great, happy